Welcome to the Great Basin Fire Potential Briefing for Thursday, August 11th. This is Gina McGuire. Over the last week, we've had significant increases to fire potential due to lightning and wind. However, much quieter weather will occur over the next few days. Therefore, no significant impacts to fire potential are expected. We will see temperatures on the rise and increase to 5 to 8 degrees above normal across the Great Basin over the next several days with drier conditions. We may see a return of lightning over Idaho into northern Utah or northeast Nevada as we go towards Sunday, and we'll be monitoring this for any increases in fire potential. We also may see more of a significant increase in moisture as we go into next week. Over the last 24 hours, we have seen scattered thunderstorms, mainly across Utah, with the wetter conditions over southwest Utah into the Arizona Strip, where over a half inch of rainfall was reported in some areas. Further north, these thunderstorms were not as wet, but still producing over a tenth of an inch of rainfall in some spots. Further north and west, over northern Nevada into Idaho, these thunderstorms were on the drier side with very little precipitation reported. If we look at the Great Basin fire activity over the last 24 hours, by the red dots on the map, you can see generally light initial attack with most fires across Utah, into northeast Nevada, and up into Idaho and Wyoming. If we look over the last 1 to 4 weeks, however, we can see very dry conditions over still the western and northern side of the Great Basin over the last 7 days, which also dip into northern Utah. Any of the moisture has been focused further south over the southern half of Utah into southern Nevada. This same trend continued over the last month, with again the wetter conditions down south and still very dry conditions over the last month or longer over parts of northern and western sides of the basin. How this has affected our ERCs. ERCs still remain below the 50th percentile over southern Utah into southern Nevada with the recent moisture we've seen. However, further north, although ERCs have come down somewhat in some areas, they still remain between the 80th and 95th percentile in most areas and still above the 97th percentile over western Nevada due to these very dry conditions. Therefore, any increases in lightning or wind again will increase fire potential in these areas. Our water vapor satellite loop from this morning with 500 millibar heights in yellow show this trough of low pressure now across the Great Basin, which will continue pushing eastward and push much of the moisture over the eastern side of the basin today with much drier conditions in the west. However, as you can see, there still is enough moisture over parts of the eastern half of Utah for some lightning to develop today in the higher elevations. Otherwise, a stronger ridge of high pressure off the west coast will move eastward over the Great Basin, and this will bring warming temperatures. Temperatures generally will increase to about 5 to 8 degrees above normal, a little bit warmer over the southern part of the basin, with drier weather over the next few days. Now looking at our weather pattern for this afternoon, on the left you can see this ridge of high pressure off the west coast, which will be pushing eastward and has already pushed drier air into the western two-thirds of the Great Basin. Also, this wind shift will occur on the eastern side of the ridge with a wind shift to the northwest across the eastern half of the basin. Also, the image on the right showing our significant fire potential finally does not have high-risk areas on for the first time in a while, and also relatively low fire potential is still expected over southern Utah with the wetter conditions that have been in place. Further north and west, still low to moderate fire potential will occur. Looking at the RH and winds today, RH on the left shows generally single-digit relative humidity in Nevada, with relative humidity 15 to 20% further east and north. We'll still have some breezy winds today from the Wasatch north into Wyoming and Idaho, with general gusts between 15 and 20 miles per hour. However, the wind direction will be shifting to the northwest over many of these areas, so that will be a change from what we've seen in recent days. Looking at Friday, this ridge of high pressure moves slightly eastward, with really dry weather moving in across much of the basin. We still do have some wetter conditions over southern Utah, but you can already see some areas starting to dry out as that air moves in as we move towards the end of the week. On Friday, relative humidity will be decreasing further east, with single-digit relative humidity pushing into Utah and generally between about 15 and 20% further north. Winds will be decreasing as we go through Friday and Saturday and still remain out of the northwest with some gusts around 15 miles per hour or so across Idaho and Wyoming. If we look at Saturday, this ridge flattens out a little bit but pushes across the Great Basin. So again, these temperatures will be warming to 5 to 8 degrees above normal over the next few days, with still dry conditions and relatively low to moderate fire potential. On Saturday, generally single-digit to low teens relative humidity is expected across most areas of the Great Basin as this drier air moves in. We also may see winds increase slightly as a trough of low pressure starts to approach the west coast over parts of northeast California into far northwest Nevada, but speeds should still remain below about 20 or 25 miles per hour. If we look at the overall forecast amount of precipitation over the next 3 days, and you can see this drier air has already moved in, so really the only moisture we'll see maybe today over parts of the eastern half of Utah into Wyoming. And again, these rainfall amounts, especially across Utah, will be lighter than what we've seen recently with the thunderstorms. On Sunday, the ridge of high pressure moves east as a trough develops along the west coast, again providing this slight increase in winds over parts of western Nevada into possibly southwest Idaho. Also on Sunday, ahead of this trough, we may see some moisture move in to parts of Idaho into northeast Nevada with a return of some showers or thunderstorms. We still have relatively low to moderate fire potential, but again, due to how dry things are and still critical fuels up across Idaho, we will be watching that for any increases in fire potential if these storms look to be on the drier side. As we move into Monday, we still have somewhat of a trough along the west coast, with moisture possibly spreading into Utah and eastern Idaho. Again, we will continue to monitor this for any increases in fire potential. By Tuesday, we continue to see this trough and the flow starts to turn a little bit more southerly or southwesterly, especially as we go towards midweek. Therefore, we may start to see additional moisture move up from the south, especially as we go towards Tuesday and Wednesday over the eastern half to two-thirds of the Great Basin, with a return for showers and thunderstorms. The best chance of wetting rains will be across Utah into parts of eastern Nevada. Looking at the total 7-day amount of precipitation, again, most of this precipitation was accounted for generally in the today period. However, as we get towards the middle of next week, we'll likely see some of this additional moisture spread further north. Looking at the 8 to 14-day outlook, which takes us into the third week in August, generally warm and dry conditions are expected across the Great Basin. That concludes our briefing for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.